Welcome, everyone, to Deck Talk, where you will be prepared. Deck Talk is a show where we invite players, deck creators, commentators, people that are just in the Hearthstone community and have something special to bring. Today we have a returning guest. He is the master of the RNG, the swag panda himself, the one, the only, Noxious.
Hello, I'm the
Hello.
swag panda.
You are the swag panda.
That alright? I am.
Damn right. So, Noxious, it's been a little bit since you've been on. You know, we had the whole Naxxramas content kind of kicking the crap out of us there for a while.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
gone now.
Oh, thank God for that. You did really good in there. A lot of your content, you were beating it with the most budget free-to-play decks I've ever seen.
Yeah, never again. Yeah, never again. Absolutely not.
Oh, I know. I was watching the stream while you were doing it. So, let's see. You've also been voted in for the next episode of Hearthstone Jeopardy.
Yeah, the Jeoparino by Amaz. That's right.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll be
should.
able to add a lot better than some of the previous season's contestants.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I can actually beat Crip because he seems to, know his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and the questions are super tricky too. Like Amaz doesn't give you free ride to points.
No,
He just doesn't.
He doesn't. He doesn't. All right.
Yeah.
So now you've been having fun with a lot of these new cards. I've talked with you about a lot of deck building concepts, this, that, and the other. So you brought us a new deck today. First of all, tell us what class it is and what the name of it is, so I can cue this up.
So the class is Shaman, and the deck is called Sea Giants. And it's basically just, well, I don't know, yeah, it's basically standard Shaman with a bit of a twist, because it's using one of the largely most unused cards, I think, in the game right now, which is Sea Giant. Like, there's Silverback Patriarch that is completely unused, and right behind it, you've got Magma Rager, then Sea Giant. Like, that's how unused this thing is. Like,
Yeah.
I've seen more people try to make Totemic Might work than Sea Giant, like, for real. And it's kind of weird, because that card looks like it's good. On
Yeah.
paper. Like, you'll remember back in the beta days, right? That thing cost 12, right? It was so bad. It used to cost 12, and it was completely unplayable.
Mm-hmm.
And they nerfed it down to 10 because they realized, well, it's not like Molten Giant or Mountain.
All right.
This one's a bit more situational.
Now, I remember one of the original incarnations of this deck that you tested on me that made me cry like a little woman. You had Farsights in the deck, and that just brought these guys out so early, it made me cry.
Yeah, I mean, Farsight is one of those cards which, it's super hit or miss, right? Because you're playing Shaman, you're already running a lot of one-drops with Earth Shock, Lightning Bolt, like Argent Squire sometimes. So sometimes you'll just whiff completely, and Farsight is completely bad. But sometimes it'll give you like a 3-mana Fire Elemental, or like a lower mana Sea Giant, which is completely broken. Even just a 2-mana Azure Drake is just beyond broken. But you do have to make, since you have to run Bolt and whatnot, you at least have to hope that you haven't found early game with Farsight. It really sucks when you do.
All right, so let's take a look at this deck here. You've got a few of the newer inclusion cards here from Nax. We've got Mr. Zombie Chow, which I know why it's there, but could you tell everybody why it's there?
And if you look, like the deck doesn't run Rockbiter weapons, and it doesn't run Argent Squires. So I actually have no one-drop that takes kind of that early game spot for board presence. And this guy is basically my Rockbiter / Argent Squire drop. That's how I treat the guy. Being a 2/3, it's really, really strong. Especially, like, I've been facing a lot of Control Warriors, and Zombie Chow plus Flame Tongue Totem equals Dead Armorsmith, which I absolutely love. I was getting really fed up with it, plus against Hunter it trades against like 1 to 3 minions sometimes. So it's pretty strong, and there's no drawback to it since you're not rushing your opponents down very early, generally speaking. So,
Right, right. So now, I mean, a lot of this is based on, from what I can see, is getting out good board presence, doing a lot of efficient trades, and then basically exhausting all your opponent's options out, and then having that board presence. Here come Giants, and at that point, what are they going to do?
Yeah, I mean the deck has, I mean, up its sleeve, like usually you'll see Shamans run Alakir and maybe Ragnaros in some older versions. You don't see that much anymore. Nowadays, like standard Shaman runs Doomhammer and Alakir as like big threats, and they'll run like 2 Sludge Belchers, right? For 5 drops for additional defensive potential. What I ended up doing is I weeded out Alakir and Doomhammer, and I weeded out the rock biter weapons as a result. And instead, I just added in the two sea giants and the bloodlust to take the place of one of the usual sludge belchers. Yeah, it's pretty much it's really standard though. Like it's not there's nothing too special about it, like about the way the roster plays out.
Right.
It's kind of a twist on the usual mid range.
Well, in testing, I got to play around with the Bloodlust here, and I had like a 5 board on turn 5, and I'm sitting here, I'm going, do I do it? Do I put the pressure on? And yeah, boom, hit him with the Bloodlust, knocked the crap out of him. He killed 3 of them off, and then turn 6, I had a giant just top decked, and he had put some minions on there, so I was like, oh, thank you for the free giant.
Yeah, that's the good thing about that's really the good thing about Bloodlust is that yes, you can use it as a finisher, but also, it's also a good way to put an opponent on the back foot for the entire rest of the game. You bring them down so low that they have to trade and be super defensive about their play. Now the drawback is if you don't have any good, like if you don't have any card draw in your hand, like Azure Drake or Manatide or anything along those lines, or no follow up, then that's gonna be your last play essentially. So you want to use Bloodlust to put either yourself in a super commanding position from that point on, since you can continue applying pressure, or to use it as a seal to seal a game. That's all that you're kind of stalemating up to that point. It's really easy to get a good board with this deck. Very easy.
It really is. I had great success with it. Even the Gnomish Inventor here, I found him very versatile, especially with Defender of Argus, Flame Tongue Totems. I had a lot of persistence throughout like the 5, 6, 7, 8 era.
Yeah, and it's pretty much that, yeah.
Yeah, it was just so good. And of course, you know, we have everybody's favorite burst finisher denier, Loetheb.
Yeah.
Oh god, everybody loves him. And
you pretty much need it.
You really
it's kind of hard to justify not running these days.
Yeah, you really do, because you can almost guarantee call when that burst finisher is going to come. And if you don't have Loetheb, you're screwed. Loetheb one of the only things to slow that down.
And the good thing is that it also prevents, like, if you're in like with this deck with Bloodlust, sometimes you can use Loetheb defensively, because you're expecting your board to get swiped, and then you play Loetheb into a Lust. That's almost you sealing a game sometimes. Sometimes it's just that easy. You just need to get that one extra turn of, you know, Loetheb plus Totem. Then they're like, oh, I can't actually wipe the board, and then the following turn it's a Bloodlust turn for you, and you're in a good spot.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that way. Like, it can help you just get that extra Lust value, which is a card I am still ambivalent about, Bloodlust, but it's won me so many games with this deck that I'm super careful removing it. I found that without that thing, I actually had very little ways to finish off the opponent, because I don't run the Wind Fury Alakir or Doomhammer combo with Rockbiter.
I just think its cost is a little over the top. I mean, when you look at like Savage Roar, that's
I agree with you. When you compare it to Savage Roar, it definitely feels that way, but the hero power synergizes so well with it that you kind of can't make it cheaper, otherwise you might just cause problems with very early wins or early leads that just snowball out of control.
Yeah, but when was the last time we saw a Shaman actually dominating a meta?
Well, I mean, in tournaments, they're still really solid. Like, we're kind of laughing about them, because in ladder, you know, Hunter just goes, hey, what's up? I'm going to hero power you down forever. Oh, okay, it's over now.
And thank you for the infinite card draw.
Yeah, I mean, this deck is not that bad against Hunters either.
No,
I feel like I've been surprised, but if I get my Bloodlust, I can very often win against them. If I don't get it, of course, it's always a problem, but I find I have a better matchup against Hunters with this deck, because Sea Giants are problematic. Like, you might think that they'd be using a Hunter's Mark on them, but they typically have already used it on Defensive Argus minions, or a Fire Elemental that's been dropped previously. So Sea Giant comes and it just sticks, and it frustrates Hunters a lot. It's the only kind of upside to the deck, I'd say.
Another class I saw that it did really well against was Priests.
Yeah.
Because you sucker play them with the Flame Elementals, they spend the big removals, and
Shadow Word Death, yep.
And oh, by the way, have a giant. See another giant?
They expect what do you like? What do they expect for Shadow or Death in a shaman? Because they know you've got Alec here. They might expect Ragnaros, but come on, let's be realistic. So they always Shadow or Death the Fire Ellie, which is super high value as
Hmm.
far as they're concerned, because there's very little else for them to use that on in a shaman matchup. And then Sea Giant falls down, and you can tell when they hover over it, they just feel like they got sucker punched, and it feels amazing. It's pretty good. The
Right.
feeling is good. Try it out.
Now against Zoo, I actually noticed this deck did really good too because
Yep.
Earth Shock knocks the crap out of Nerubian Eggs, so they get no benefit out of that. So it
Mm-hmm.
almost becomes a dead card. Hexes for Mr. Doomguard, which we all know and love.
Yep.
And the rest of it is just a bunch of trading to exhaust him out. And then here
Yeah,
come
it's a
Giants,
standard
and he has
matchup,
nothing.
right?
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
is. It just becomes a tempo game, and you have more advantages than the Warlock does.
Yeah, like sometimes, and that's where it kind of falls against Zoo. If you don't get the Zombie Chow or like you really need your at least a Hunted Creeper,
Hmm.
because Feral Spirit Lightning Storm is guaranteed weakening their board for at least like for you to be able to trade into it. So it's just a matter of being able to outlast them. It's not about outpacing because you can't race the
No,
board acquisition of Zoo
no.
unless you've got a Flame Tongue with a Hunted Creeper. Maybe then you can do that. But most of the time, you're just gonna be trying to outlast them until you can finally stabilize. And then with Sea Giants, it's you just steal the game.
Right,
At
right.
that point, it's very easy.
So now, this deck I've had a lot of fun with, but what would you say is like the greatest weakness to this deck? Like what design that we've been seeing floating around?
I like Control Warrior is still a really tough matchup because like, and I get I don't know if that's the case for everyone who's playing against them as Shaman, but I just feel like even if I get a good start with Zombie Chow, like a Haunted Creeper, follow ups, Feral Spirit, I can't really threaten them. Like unless I've got a Bloodlust with a filled up board, threatening a Control Warrior is very, very difficult. Between the axes that like basically one for one Feral Spirit and the armor gain that they get from that, plus the Armor Smith, plus the Acolytes of Pain, and the Cruel Taskmasters, it gets really problematic. The only upside is that most of the time they'll be using Executes and Shield Slam on Azure Drakes and Fire Ellies, which is kind of the trap.
Hmm.
Then Sea Giant comes out and it's just a disaster. They don't like it, which is the only saving grace of the deck, I'd say. It's the surprise element, I guess. But most of the time, it's just a standard, like fairly standard against Control Warrior. You have a hard time establishing any kind of. You get tempo, you
Right.
get tempo perfectly fine, but you have a hard time getting through the armor over the entire game.
Now, there's another matchup that I actually did have a little bit of difficulty with, and that was Paladin.
Oh, I could imagine that. Yeah, equality concept is always a problem. Your minions don't stick.
Humility was kicking the crap out of me. Outdoor
Yeah,
Peacekeepers.
yeah. I mean, I don't mind those too much because they'll usually, as I said, use them on even Azure Drake or Fire Ellis
Hmm.
because unless they expect the Sea Giant, those are still their prime targets for those cards. Like, there's very little reason for them to ever use Aldor Peacekeeper or hold on to Aldor Peacekeeper if you've got a Fire Alien to play. It's
Hmm.
always kind of a given.
Oh yeah.
You run into problems, I guess, if they run one Humility to Aldors, but that's fairly, I wouldn't say it's unusual, but it's mostly run in very heavy control pally, of which I haven't seen too much, so it's not something I'm too worried about when I play this.
I tend to get like one every 3 hours. So I mean
Yeah,
that
you don't get a lot. I mean, it's
no.
not that bad, really.
Yeah, it's not as relevant to say Hunter or Zoo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much. If you beat Hunter, I guess you can just go to the metagame.
Okay,
Just
so
go in ladder.
now there's also another one that I have yet to face off against, but I see might actually give some difficulty, and that is Mage.
Secret Mage is actually surprisingly problematic because of Counterspell.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually run into it, and it's really frustrating because the only way you deal with Kirantor Mage is essentially by trading up something that got Flame Tongued, or you bolt it. And if you bolt it, the odds are you're probably going to get Counterspelled, or like it happens a lot nowadays. Most Secret Mages run two Counterspells, or duplicates, which means you're either giving them two Kirantor Mages as follow-ups, which is a disaster since
Mm-hmm.
it's just out of range of your lightning storm until you get extra spell power. Like it's just out of range of a guaranteed kill. So that card is like mage can be really problematic. We don't run rock biter, so we have no like clear answer to mana worm. There's a lot of things that can go awfully wrong with that matchup. But if you've got the blood mage or the totem plus storm, and you've already exhausted one counter spell, like this is a lot of if, but you can sometimes just salvage it. But the fact that you have no healing means, oh, fireball. Oh, okay, I'm dead. There's a point of no return against mages,
All
but you
right.
see it spiral out of control.
Now, you last season you made Legend. Were you
Yeah.
using this deck or a slight variation
No,
of this
I was
deck?
using exactly this.
You were using this. This took
Yeah,
you to Legend.
yeah. It's silly. I mean, it was late season, right? So you have to expect goofy decks to maybe get there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's still funny how effective it was. I think I streaked from like 6-0 from rank 2. Like just 6 wins in a row, got into legend. That's it. Um, I was expecting to struggle for ages by playing a fun deck, but it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, it was actually the one time I watched you stream that you were actually smiling the entire way.
Yeah, well, not really. I mean, I got pretty salty at the end. I ran against a Miracle Rogue who had Alex Straza. Like, she put me on 15 health on turn 9. I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding. I'm dead next turn. Like, doesn't even need to get its hand. Just Alex Straza into double Leroy. I was like, oh, okay, great. I'm loving Hearthstone. Yeah.
All right, so I think that wraps it up for this deck. It's a fun deck. I've had a lot of fun messing around with it. There will be footage of playtesting in the description of this video, so please check that out.
Yeah.
Now, if you would like to follow Noxious, you can follow him on Twitter at Noxious, GLHF, on Twitch /Noxious_HS, or on YouTube /Noxious Hearthstone.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, so Noxious is a part of the show where we do shout outs, thank people, everything we need to do. So, who'd you like to thank?
I'd like to thank my sponsor, Razer, and Teal Series, and everyone who's feeding money to me through sponsorships. AKA no one at all. But that being said, I'd like to thank everyone who's watching the stream pretty much on a daily basis. You guys are freaking amazing. And, well, I'm going to thank Amaz for inviting me to Hearthstone Jeoparino.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I actually can't wait to answer them questions. Show my skill in the World of Warcraft. Let's do that.
Oh, yeah. And,
So shout out to Amaz, man. Let's do this.
I can attest he has skill in World of Warcraft. I play with him all the time, and I'm always learning something new. So, anyway, if you like this video, please like, subscribe. Every Friday, MassEnchant has a Speed Swiss with a $20 BattleNet NA Fund prize for the winner. So please check that out. This is Shiv saying bye-bye. Nox?
Have a nice one, and take care of yourselves.
Oh, man, your screen just froze. But that's okay. We're out.